Hello everybody, this is Kiran and today we will learn about requirement traceability matrix. So this is a very important document and matrix which we follow and process in our testing activities. So we'll understand what RTM is. So requirement traceability matrix is a mapping between the requirements and the test cases. So what do I mean when I say mapping? It means we create a documentation to make sure that all the requirements have one or more associated test cases with them, and vice versa, all the test cases have been written for one or more requirements. Now, what do we actually mean when we say that? I'll show you a diagram and make that very clear to you. So the same definition has been explained here. If you can check here. So what I'll do, I'll show you a diagram which will make it clear. So look at my screen. On the x-axis, you see all the requirements. So let's say we have some 10 requirements in our project. It will be huge though, like it will have many requirements. But for example, we'll just take 10. So the x-axis is along, the x-axis is carrying the requirement IDs. And let's say requirement 1, 2, 3, 4 till 10. And the y-axis is having all the test case IDs. Okay. Now there's a column called total, which is spreading towards both x and y. So what does this Excel sheet mean? I'll explain you. Let's say for requirement number 1, we have written only one test cases. So test case 1 is fulfilling or testing requirement number 1. Test case requirement number 2 is being tested by test cases 2 and 3. Okay. Requirement number 3 is being tested by test case 1, 9, 10 and 11. So this total is calculated and written here. Okay. So requirement 1 is being tested by only one test case. Requirement 2 is being tested by 2 test cases, which is this and this. Requirement 3 is being tested by 4 test cases. This, test case 1, 9, 10 and 11 and so on. So you are actually calculating and keeping a track of how many test cases are required or how many test cases are related to that particular requirement. So that total you are mentioning here. Right? We'll take the vice versa situation wherein we are calculating the test cases. So test case 1 is testing how many requirements? 1, 3 and 10. So 3 requirements are being tested by test case 1. Test case 2 is related or testing only one requirement, which is this. So this cross symbol is actually marking this, it's mapping between the requirements and the test cases. So requirement number 2 is only related to test case number 2. Now test case number 3 is related to requirement number 2 and 8. So 2 requirements. So test case 3 is related to 2 requirements. And let's go forward and see test case 10. It is related to requirement number 3, 9 and 10. So 3 requirements. Got it? And we'll go the opposite way. Requirement 10 is being tested by how many test cases? Test case 1, 10, 11 and 12. So 4 test cases are testing requirement number 10. So what is an RTM? RTM is a matrix and it's a mapping between requirements and test cases to make sure that all the requirements have one or more test cases associated with them, and all the test cases which have been written is actually testing one or more requirements. That is, we have not written test cases. Let's say we had something like test case 13 here. So imagine we had something which is test case 13. And here the total was 0, let's say. So that is test case 13 has been written for no requirement. So it's useless, isn't it? And similarly, if we just understand it, let's say we had requirement 11, something like that, okay, and there was no test cases associated with it. That is, requirement 11 has not been tested yet. So we have to have test cases associated with it. So that's how you understand the test coverage of a system. Now, we'll quickly go and understand the advantages of RTM. It confirms 100% test coverage. Test coverage, that is, all the requirements have been tested or not. So if you have associated test cases, that means yes, you have tested it at least. So that is a reason we follow RTM, so that we can be confirmed that okay, there is 100% test coverage. So to try to meet the ideal scenario. It highlights any requirement is missing or document inconsistencies. So if there is any requirement, if we have a test case and we don't have an associated requirement mentioned in that documentation, so we should be making sure that okay, fine, this requirement is not mentioned, so we should have that requirement also mentioned. So if there is any inconsistency, like we are while testing, we can think of scenarios which have not been mentioned in the requirement sheet. So as testers, we can suggest that okay, that this test case arise, but then I think this requirement should also be mentioned. So we can do that, you know, as testers we can help. It shows the overall defect or execution status. Yes, I'll show you another sheet which you'll understand how the defect and execution status is also checked and kept a track, or we can keep a track of that. So we can use that like keeping a track of the defects which are open status and closed status. And it also helps in analyzing and estimating the QA team's work. Like we can see that how many test cases have been tested, how many requirements have been tested, how much is left to be tested. So we can have a track of the QA team's activities using this sheet also. So let's get back to the PPT, and we'll just quickly take an example and understand RTM more. So same advantages have been mentioned here in the PPT as well. So you can see here this diagram which I have. So it has test case ID, which is 1, and test case ID is related to business requirement 1, okay, and then there is technical requirement 94. So there can be business requirement, and then it can be further broken down into technical requirement, which actually the coders will be working on. So technical requirement is number 94, let's say, and the test case is this, because it's a test case sheet which we are writing here. So we are actually mapping the business requirements to the test case sheet. So this is also a way of creating the traceability. So there's no hard and fast that we have to create the traceability like this. We can trace it as we want to. So we are writing the test cases, also test steps to reproduce, if you remember, and then we have test data, and then we have expected results. Okay. So this is an example wherein we are maintaining the test suite with the business IDs mapped to it. So we are creating the traceability here. Now what we'll do, I'm giving you an example why do we actually need RTM. So let's say there is a change in the requirement. So initially there was only email address field, and we had to send some text to some client. Now in the next change, what we want the recipient name to be also mentioned in that. Not just the email address field, we also need the recipient's name so that we can send the email. Now this change has been incorporated. So we should be updating the test suite also. Now we don't know that where all this particular requirements are present, and how do we. So imagine this situation, this sheet where with each test cases you have the requirement ID marked. So let's say in the previous slide you know which requirement is this. Let's say there is requirement number 26. So you know this is requirement number 26. So you can go to the test case sheet, and wherever there is requirement number 26, you can go there and do the changes. So that is so easy, because you already know which requirement is this, and in your test suite you have already marked which all test cases are actually testing this requirement. So this requirement is being affected by how many test cases you already know here. Like you select that. So you already know, so you know where to make the changes in the or updating the test cases. But if you don't know that, if you didn't had this field, how would you have searched that? Okay, where all we have to go and check for the email address? And so where I have to actually change the recipient name also, add the recipient name also. So it is very tough and tiring in that case, wherein you don't have anything mapped. But if you have your test case suite mapped with your requirement ID, it's easy to identify and know where all the changes needs to be done. So it saves a lot of time. So I'll go back and explain the example again. So here you have initially you had to only use the email ID. Now there's an email which you have to send, maybe that is a functionality. So you have to change some, you have to send some email. Okay, you have to send an order via email, let's say. So initially only email ID was required. Now you have to also add the recipient's name. This is the new change which has come. Now you have to update the test suite. So to update the test suite, if you have this requirement ID, let's say that this entire requirement ID was requirement number 25 or 26, let's say 26. So here in this sheet, you know that okay, this is mapped. So you'll search for requirement 26, you go, you'll highlight it and then make the changes accordingly. But if this is not mapped, you don't know which all requirements are there, this particular column itself is not there, how would you do that? So that's a very tiring work in that case. You have to go and check each test cases. So that's how requirement traceability matrix helps a lot. Now you can, again, I'll give you some insight on how it looks. So you have the business requirements. Let's say it's number 26. The associated functional design. So you have to create functional design and high level design, detail level design. Then you can have your technical design also separately. It depends how the team wants to maintain the documentation. So there's one business requirements, and based on that you can have multiple or single functional design, and they can have high level designing of that, and then detail level designing, and then test cases. So this business requirement is being tested by these 4 test cases. That's how you're maintaining the traceability. So you can map it to the test suite also, and you can maintain a sheet like this when you have the business requirements listed, and the relevant test functional designing, the relevant high level designing, detail level or low level designing, and also all the test cases. So how is this traceability helping? If any test case is failing, we know that which all requirements needs to be tested well. So you have to know, you can know the areas of testing, and it is also to make sure that all the requirements have been tested, or we have test cases related to all the requirements or not. So that's how beautiful this traceability matrix, and a very helpful document if you are actually maintaining it well, and it actually eases the work. The initial cost is high, okay, fine, you put in time to create this document, but then later on it saves a lot of time by knowing and mapping the test cases to the requirements. So this can help you create a lot of matrix. You can create the current status of your bugs, and because if the test cases are there, you can also create that which test cases have failed. So if I show you here, the test data is there. So let's say it has failed, so you know that okay, this business requirement is failed now. So you know how to, when later on it is passing, you have to test this. So many matrices can be followed based on this. So you can create either in the test suite you can map it, and you can also create a separate documentation like this, wherein you can know that each requirement has how many test cases associated with it. So it depends how you want to do. So this first diagram which I had shown you here is to understand what BRD is, so that you can clearly understand in your head, okay, actually you're knowing the total number of test cases associated with each requirement. Also you're knowing that how many requirements are being tested by each test cases. So this was for understanding. Then in how we actually do is these diagrams which I have shown you. So here actually you are seeing that okay, fine, we are creating test suite and we are mapping the business requirement IDs to it. Also we are creating a separate document where we are actually writing the business requirement ID and mapping it to the test cases which are associated with that. So that's how you can create different traceabilities. Okay, so that's requirement traceability matrix. Now we'll go move forward and learn about something called FSD, functional specification document. let's say there are different business requirements like loan process and ease of use, and it has different functional specifications. So loan process is one business requirement which is having two function specifications. One is new users and one is existing users. Similarly, in the ease of use, we'll have more functional requirements. So I'll show you one sheet which will make it very clear. So these are the test scenarios which can be extracted from the BRD and the FSD. So these are all the scenarios. Let's go back to the next sheet. It will make it more easier for you to understand. So you can see here we have the BRD section. So we have two BRDs, loan processes and ease of use. And in the FSD section, functional specification documents, we have separate FSDs for each BRD. So for loan process, we have new users and existing user. For ease of use, we have only one, which is ease of use. Now, relevant test scenarios we have extracted for. So from one FSD, we have maybe written some 4 test scenarios. From the second FSD, we have written some 4 test scenarios, and so on. And for each scenario, we'll have multiple test cases. So that's how it expands. We'll have one business requirement. For that business requirement, we'll create functional specifications. For each functional specifications, we can have multiple scenarios. For each scenarios, we'll have multiple test cases. So that's how it expands, and that's how we maintain all the documentations in our in the project which we are working for. And as a testing team, you must know what you are actually testing. So for that, you must be knowing which business requirement you are testing. So under that business requirement, how many functional specifications we have. So then for which functional specification, how many scenarios you have created. So and for which scenario actually you're going to write the test cases. So once this flow is very clear, you'll have a clear picture in your head what actually you have to test, how you have to test, and then next what you have to do. So this estimation, this planning, this numbers should be on your tips. This understanding of the business flow should be on your tips, because as tester, you should know the in and out of the platform, and so many people are relying upon you. So you are a very responsible person, and you must be aware that how this chart is going, and these documentations are so important to maintain, because these documentation make it very clear where you are in testing, how much yet to be tested, how much is left to be tested, and what is not yet tested, what is not yet developed. You know, you have to keep tracking that. You have to report that as in your team that okay, this has not been created, we still have to work on this, these many bugs are open for this requirement, we have to test this requirement again. So these understanding of the numbers on what you're working is important, guys. So that's all from today's session. Let's meet in the next class and learn more about testing. Thank you.